Welcome to 247 Real Talk. This is your host, Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you for yet another week. I hope you had a great week. And for those of you here in the Eastern Seaboard, I hope you're beginning to adjust in that serious drop in temperatures. Probably at nighttime, probably almost 40 degrees drop to where we are right now. As I said, I hope you had a great week. And this week, I'm going to talk about something that's brand new, fresh in the news. Incorporates a little bit of mental health, a little bit of gun issues, and a little bit of what's going on with us as people. So sit back, relax, and I'll be right back with you. So as I said, welcome back to 247 Real Talk Podcast. Again, my name is Julian Perry. It's a pleasure to be here with you for another week. So this week we're going to have a quick chat about what's going on with us as human beings, as people, and a horrific event that occurred in, I believe, the housing complex was called Flatbush Gardens in Brooklyn, New York. About 3 days ago, I think it was probably Monday night or Sunday night, and a horrific event occurred. I happened to see the raw footage of what happened, and honestly, I wanted to play it for you on the YouTube channel, but I felt that the impact would have been too much for many of my viewers, the horrific scene. And I also want to be respectful to the family that lost their loved ones in this tragic event. So for those of you who actually have been so busy that you have no idea what I'm talking about, three or four nights ago in that apartment building, a tenant who has apparently had probably about 5 or 6 complaints over a period of time, noise complaints with the tenants above, went upstairs to confront them. I saw the video, like I said. The confrontation spilled from the apartment out into the hallway. The tenants upstairs, the ones who were being accused, the main actors in having a conversation with the tenant from downstairs, another male, was father and stepson. Father was a pretty large guy. Tenant from downstairs was shorter but stocky. And the son was, I guess, slimmer than the father, but also a pretty tall guy. They spoke back and forth near the top of the stairs for a few minutes, and then as I believe it was the tenant from upstairs, his spouse, kind of do what women do, right? Put common sense into situations when our male egos get out of control. She must have sensed for some reason that this was not going to go well, so she pulled him by his shirt. He kept pulling away to get him back in the apartment. At that time, the tenant from downstairs walked to near the top of the stairs and pulled a gun out his waist, pointed it at the father. What happened next will forever be seared in my mind. What happened next, I couldn't believe. The father, obviously, on seeing the gun, started to retreat back to his apartment, which was now, I don't know, 20 feet away, the door. Now, I didn't hear any audio on the video, right? This was a camera that was in the hallway, which may or may not have had audio. So I don't know if when he pulled the gun, I don't know what if words were said, but as he's walking back in somewhat of a spirited effort to get out of the way, the tenant from downstairs shoots him once in what I would call, I would say it's in the back. It's sort of in the corner between the side and the back. He might have shot him once or twice, I'm not sure. But he shot him enough that the woman, the mother, and whoever else was there, I'm trying to recall, ran back into the apartment. The father ran but dropped right in front of the door of the apartment. At that time, the wife and whoever had run in and closed the door. The son, from what I can ascertain from the video, I think in his panic, he wanted to run past the gunman and run down the stairs. I keep playing the video over and over and trying to count. By my last count, at close range, this is point blank range now. This is a distance of maybe 2 feet between the gun and the son. It looks like he was shot 8 times. He's shot, he stumbled, and when he goes down the ground, the guy just keeps standing over him and shooting. Then the tenant from downstairs. So let's stop calling him tenant from downstairs. This gentleman's name is Jason Pass. He walks over to the door now that's closed, where the father is lying down, is laying, wounded. Shoots him again, and then goes over and shoots him from close up in his head to make sure he's dead. Then he goes off to the elevator, calmly presses the button with the gun in his hand, waits for, it had to be, it's on the video when you look at it, it seems like an eternity, but he probably waited, I don't know, a minute for the elevator to come and gets on the elevator. The camera, I'm not sure, I guess the camera picks up movement and it sort of twists and moves towards the movement. So with the camera, you could see it moved at one point to the son because he's laying there and you see his stomach heaving. Now, this boy, I forgot how old, 20-something years old, had about, I don't know, I guess sometime in the news they'll tell us, but it looked to me, I don't know if all the shots hit him, but they were 2 feet away, and I'm assuming that he got shot close to 8 times. And the father probably 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 times, with the final shot being the one to the head at close range, while he's dying on the ground. So let's pause there, because there's more to the story of this Mr. Jason Pass. At this point, Jason Pass is out the story because he got in the elevator. But I started off, when I opened this episode, talking about guns and mental health. And I'm going to address both because I had an interesting conversation with one of my biggest supporters today. He and I have had ongoing, I think you've heard me mention this in previous episodes, an ongoing debate about gun control. The reason I don't really want to get into a gun control conversation in this episode is because I just checked the latest police briefing before I got on to record the episode. And according to what the police are saying, there's a possibility that this gentleman, Jason Pass, was once a corrections officer, some sort of law enforcement. I also heard that the gun they're saying that was used possibly was not registered to him. I'm not sure. But keeping in mind that if he was law enforcement and if he was if he left the job honorably, then he would likely have had a registered gun, registered to him legally. So before we get into the gun control conversation, which I may pick up on another episode, I think I first need the details to understand if he had the gun legally as a maybe retired law enforcement officer. The reason that's important to the gun control conversation is because if he had the gun legally, then irrespective of what side you're on, and you guys who have followed me on that topic know that I'm directly down the middle. I'm not sure what you call me. You've got pro-gun, anti-gun, and then you have midstream gun. That's me, right? Just to remind you, I'm a firearms instructor. I have New York State licenses for armed carry. I'm a trainer. I'm a range safety officer. All the things that are associated. I've shot competitions, but I have a different belief in how this should be managed, and my position is in the middle where pro-gunners would not necessarily agree with me and anti-gunners will not necessarily agree with me either. Because some of the things I call for, mental health records, checking and periodic validations and and license and registration for firearms. I understand why pro-gunners don't want it, right? Because we unfortunately live in a society where when you agree to something, you give the government an inch and you give in, they take a yard, and eventually you end up in a matter of violation of your rights, right? So I understand why there's a history there that says we can't trust that if we say yes to this one thing that you're not only going to come back for more and more and more, but you're going to use this one thing against us. The position of anti-gunners, at least for the one I debate with a lot, I mentioned to him today that their position is not practical. So theoretically, let's touch on this for a second, even though I didn't want to. Theoretically, anti-gunners will say, get rid of all guns. And I said to him, I said, you know what? We could have that discussion if it was even realistic or made any sense. But we can't. And understand what I say by any sense. Don't get too excited here. What I mean is we have a society that in most states and for many, many, many years, guns were legal for anyone. You could have them, unless you commit a crime. Much like guys who collect bobbleheads or Pokemon cards or baseball cards, gun collectors love guns. As someone, like I said, who's utilized many brands and calibers, there's a difference in each one. There's a gentleman in the Gilgo Beach murders here, a suspect who was arrested. You probably heard it all over the news across the country, across the world, probably. When his house was raided, they seized over 200 guns. Now, of course, the news is going to sensationalize this. Oh, this guy is suspected of murder, and he had over 200 guns. Well, it turns out all the 200 guns were legal. Right now, he's actually in prison, but suing to get the guns back because I guess, again, for him, it's not about the 200 guns. It's about the value of them. If he has to pay for a defense, whatever that entails, this is property he can sell because it's legal. And I make that point to say that across the United States right now, there's millions of guns out there. Millions. That's not an exaggeration. So the thought that you could somehow ban it and take anybody's gun away is not only, it's just ludicrous. It's a waste of time. So anyone coming to me with that position is a non-starter because what you're arguing is a moot point. But I want, that was going to become part of this discussion if we found out by this time of recording this episode that the gentleman, Jason Pass, had an illegal gun. But we don't know that. And we don't know if he was ex-law enforcement and who he worked for and if he had a right to have it. But let's talk about the marriage now of whether he had the gun itself and mental health. I also said to my dear friend today, I can't remember if he agreed or disagreed with me, but I said to him, based on my experience with firearms, based on the feel of it, based on the impact and the power that it brings and the destruction that it can bring as well. The people I know, I actually don't know anyone who would actually go to the point of shooting anyone like that and then walking up to the I gotta say body, right? Because this guy was shot 2 or 3 times as he lay there. His chances of survival were I don't know what they were, but he was shot, like I said, one sort of back corner, second one I think almost in the same location as he was down on the ground. And I can't remember if there was a third or fourth, but then there was the one where he walked up and shot him in his head. To have someone laying on the ground, to walk up and shoot him in his head to make sure he's dead, to shoot a young boy 8 times, as far as I counted, all over a noise complaint above your head, says to me that somewhere in that scenario, there was a mental break. And I said to him, and I will stand by this, the average person, even the average person who is angry, even the average person who decides to shoot out of pure anger, it still takes a lot right? Because most people kind of shoot when you see these things happen on TV and cameras catch them. They kind of shoot and then run. To put that many rounds in this young boy. Now everybody in the apartment building had to be hearing these rounds go off. To take the time to, and he didn't run up to this man and shoot him in his head. He walked calmly up to this man and put a bullet in his head. Walked calmly to the elevator. No hurry. No, oh, maybe the cops are on their way. Doesn't run down the stairs. Now, the way the son was laying, his feet were, he's pretty tall, so his head was against the wall. His body was laid towards the entrance, the top of the stairs, and his feet, I guess, went right over the edge of the top of the stairs. So maybe he decided he didn't want to walk and step over the boy to run down the stairs. Or maybe he felt he could be, I don't know what it is, because he got into an elevator. Took the elevator down, and the accounts I hear was then he walked out the building and walked up the street. That had to be a mental break. Now, I'm not making excuses for this man, because I think this is the one for me, and I've had the ability to see footage from a lot of different crimes. I've seen some brutal crimes. This was incredibly brutal. It was incredibly stupid. And that calmness tells me that this person had just lost touch with reality. Before I get back to that part of the story and finish it up that way, the story as it is tonight is the investigators did their investigations. They're saying that they checked to see what cars were linked to him. They found a license plate of interest. They put a bolo out for it. There was a lookout for the license plate. Some point this morning, license plate reader found the car. Police responded. The gentleman, Jason Pass, was in the car, I guess hiding. He got out and he ran. They chased him. They cornered him at some point. More police responded. Emergency services responded. Negotiator responded. They were talking to him for a while. And then all of a sudden, he just decided to rush them with a knife. Now, you're talking about several police officers. And in the process of rushing them with a knife, he was shot 3 times in the chest and once in the leg by the police. He was taken to the hospital where he succumbed to his injuries. So everything about this was horrific. But there's a part here that asks me, what's going on with us as human beings? I mean, we hear about shootings on the news every night, especially in New York. It just happens. But when you get to see it, understand that we've reached a state as human beings where another life means nothing. Look, I lived in an apartment building for 26 years before I bought my home. I had a tenant upstairs in one of the apartments where I think at least 3 occasions he forgot the tub on. He turned on the tub. I guess he wanted to take a bath in the tub, and the water overflowed. I heard this noise. I walked into my bath. There's water pouring down in the walls into my bathroom. Eventually, there was stains on the wall, and even another coat of paint didn't help. You know those brown stains you get? And we spoke about it, not harshly, because I understood it as upsetting as it was, as disturbing as it was. It was, number one, it was, and as careless as it was for my tenant upstairs, he still didn't do it on purpose. We have lost the ability to have tolerance for each other to the point where we destroy how many families? Because at some point when the shooting happened, I think I saw a newscast where they didn't show a face, but the Jason Pass's, the shooter's sister was on the news talking about it. I'm talking about the problems they have with the tenant above. So that family is destroyed by the loss of the police having to take down this shooter. This woman on the floor above lost her son and her husband, who is the only sole breadwinner that was apparently paying all the bills, putting her through school and I forgot what else, but it was a massive impact. So here we have a situation where the families are affected, 3 lives are lost over a noise from an apartment above. And the tenant above is saying, look, we don't really know what happened. We heard him banging from below, and her husband started banging on the floor, banging back, kind of saying, "Why are you hitting?" Okay. Now, I remember years ago when I was living in an apartment, I had an elderly lady that lived under me. Actually, it happened twice with 2 different ladies. One was elderly, one was not. But they complained to the management that about noise from my apartment. Now, at the time, I was living alone, and I remember they complained that because I would get home, I left early in the morning. I would get home 6:30 in the afternoon. So between 6:30 and when I went to bed, maybe 10:30, they complained about noise. Now, bear in mind that I had wall-to-wall padding and wall-to-wall carpet. So maybe I walk heavily, right? But I wasn't dancing. I wasn't jumping up and down. I wasn't playing loud music. I was probably likely, I mean, it's a long time ago, but traversing my apartment in the normal thing of preparations of getting your dinner and getting your clothes ready for the next day, those sorts of things. So they both complained, and both of them ultimately were moved, not me, because the management felt that what they were complaining about was unreasonable. We have to have some give and take in life. We have to have some tolerance for each other in life. They say this gentleman, Jason Pass, filed 6 complaints in the past about noise from above. I don't know how many people lived in the apartment above. I don't know what kind of noise was. I don't know. This man that came out that the father he ultimately shot was a big guy. So maybe he walks heavily. Either way, I remember back in the days when I grew up where if this actually went to a violent issue, it would have been a fist fight. And it would have taken a lot more aggression to get to the point where fists were thrown. But that would have been it. Here we have, I mean, I'm sorry I can't show it to you because, like I said, I want to be sensitive not only to my viewers but to the family, right? I mean, if I show this, I'm just adding to the video that stays on the internet forever. Where when this family, this man's wife and kids or whomever go online for something, they may run into my podcast and have to watch the brutal murder of their father and brother again. So I've decided not to show it. But I want you to understand that the brutality here was inhumane. It was nothing that when we were created by the Almighty, that's certainly not what He intended us to do to each other. It's almost like I wish that the Mr. Jason Pass did not die so that somebody can get into his head to understand what was going on, because maybe we can start to figure out each other more, see the signs of when people are getting to that point more, and do whatever is necessary for mental health to avoid this happening. This is not, like I said, I can't argue whether or not it's a gun issue because we don't know the story there yet. And the reason I'm saying that, just to make sure I qualify if I didn't say it before, if it was a retired cop, for instance, regardless of gun laws, he would have had that gun because he was required law enforcement. That's my point. So this is a moot point in terms, if he was law enforcement, a moot point is as to whether it was an illegal gun or whatever, because he would have had most likely the right to have the gun, right? If that's not the case, if he left the law enforcement dishonorably or he never was law enforcement, then we can have the conversation about, well, we're throwing into the mix now this man getting a hold of a gun in a city, especially like New York City and a lot of places across this country where access to guns is just too easy, and they keep falling into the wrong hands. They're not into the hands of the law-abiding citizens, they're into the hands of the criminals. Our politicians, who we won't talk about in depth tonight, feel that they're going to pull the wool over the population's eyes by saying, oh, that happened, there was a shooting, let's create a new law. And they make laws that only law-abiding citizens, who already are not the ones who committed the crimes, have to follow. Because they have no clue, some have no clue and some don't want to stop the illegal or guns that are here and stopping criminals and people who should not have guns from getting them. And that's a different conversation. But the point is, I felt it necessary to bring this issue up and have this conversation on this podcast. Not sure, like I said, for those of you who didn't hear from the story, because not everybody watches the news. I watch the news, every day because I bring you these issues, so I need to know what's going on. I spoke to another friend today who told me basically he has to shut the news off. He's had enough, and I've heard that with several people. My wife doesn't look at the news. She says it's just she probably likely has lost faith in humankind. But here we are in a horrific situation. The breadwinner, the father, the son, dead. The shooter, dead over some noise. Listen to that. Something like that. Maybe walking. Okay? Something that you can talk about. Something that you can get. They did say they made complaints to management. I don't know if everything was done, but then your issue would then be to take management to task because they need to solve this, right? The guy upstairs is going to say, hey, we're not making any more noise other than just walking around our apartment. The guy downstairs is going to say, man, it sounds like the roof is coming down. Nowhere in that scenario, or in any scenario like, but you're speaking about this specific scenario, nowhere in there, in normal human beings who were brought into this world to live in kindness with each other and humanity and empathy, nowhere does that story end with this man going upstairs, putting 8 bullets into one boy and putting, I guess, 4 or 5 into the father, one at point blank range, purposely, right? So the initial shots, yeah, he fired, the guy's walking away, the guy went down. The son tried to run by, he started shooting and he just kept shooting at him. When the son fell down, he kept pumping the bullets in him. And then he leaves there and walks from the head of the steps, what would now be, I don't know, 30 feet or whatever, over to the father who's lying on the ground motionless. And the only movement you see from the father is when he puts the final bullet in his head, and that causes his body to jerk. Then he walks to the elevator and presses the elevator button and calmly. Most people we know, or we've heard of, what do you hear the police saying? They shot and they ran. Most surveillance cameras catch people shooting and running. This man took his time, waited for the elevator, got into the elevator, left, and as far as eyewitnesses say, walked up the block like no big deal. If you're telling me that that's normal, if you're telling me that not only is that's acceptable, then you're missing the point. Number one, we have a problem in society with mental health and things that happen in society that push people over the edge for the littlest thing. Obviously, I honestly don't know what else was going on in this man's life, but I would be shocked if this was just about the noise upstairs. Most times that people get to this point where they have a mental break, there are a whole lot of other pressures going on in their lives. There many times there are symptoms. There are things that we should see that we ignore that's going on with this individual. Change in moods, change in attitudes, aggression, all these things. But here we have a sad, tragic story. Because number one, we have one human being who felt that noise in an apartment equated to taking the lives of the 2 people upstairs, the father and his son, over a verbal altercation. We have a management company that probably should have paid more attention, but they have a ton of apartments. We know this. I've dealt with property management. Unless you go after them sometimes nonstop, you don't get anything out of that. But the biggest failure here, along with the mental health and the ability of anyone to recognize it, is the fact that this is where we are as human beings today. You can be shot for walking in your own apartment. You can be shot because someone perceives your walking to be disruptive and to be purposeful. Again, I lived this with the two different ladies that lived under me over the years, both of who claimed this. Now remember, I would leave the house at 5 o'clock in the morning. As I said, I would be back at 6:30 at night. So the entire daytime I was not there. And when I was there, I was up for maybe 3.5 hours before I had to retire to get up again in the morning. So for 3.5 hours out of an entire day, and even there's times when I would sit down to watch TV, there's times when I would sit down to eat, so it wasn't walking for 3.5 hours. They made a complaint. And the complaint was checked out, and I was found not to be in the wrong because what I was doing was living. And I was in compliance with carpet and padding and all of that. There are ways to solve our problems, people. Shooting each other and taking lives and hurting families is not the way. I never want to hear any relative I know died from shooting. I've had a cousin who was shot and killed. This just does not make sense. And that was over an argument as well on the streets of Brooklyn. It doesn't make sense. We are getting to a place where we are so far away from who we were created to be that we are self-destructive. Everyone needs to pay attention. The politicians who are off in la la land doing their own thing for their own benefit, we as the people, for the people, by the people, as I've said in many episodes, need to bring them to their knees, need to bring them to a place of reckoning. We can't solve every problem. But if we take the time out as human beings to empower each other to be better people, maybe we'll solve or stop one situation that occurred like that the one in Flatbush Gardens, where these families are forever scarred, where a horrific murder took place, and where lives that were being depended on and lives with potential for the future were lost, all over someone's footsteps, or maybe something that actually happened to fall on the floor. We've got to do better. It starts with us empowering each other in the right way. It starts with us being respectful to each other. And I'm going to do another episode at some point about respect, including respect in the workplace, respecting your superiors, respecting your staff, understanding the way to speak to people and to treat people to get the best out of them. But we need to do this across our lives, across this nation, across this world. If you look around the world, see the wars that are going on right now with Israel and Hamas and Russia and Ukraine, you realize that we are at a place almost of self-destruction. We either pull the reins now, or the next time you reach for the reins, it may be too late. Thank you so much, as always, for allowing me to be a part of your day, your week, your evening, whenever you listen to me. I continue to ask each and every one of you to please share the podcast, to like, subscribe, comment if you have a comment. Those of you who've been sending me emails at podcast@247realtalk.net, I appreciate you. I thank you. Those of you who have been sending me those WhatsApp messages and engaging in back and forth conversations, I thank you. A lot of that is what keeps me going and doing what I'm doing when I don't get like I said, the recognition of a celebrity, but I get the recognition of people who really care, who have opinions, who are willing to debate, and who truly believe in making a difference. Again, thank you so much. This episode will air on this Friday, November 3rd. I am going on vacation for 1 week. I will not be around in time to have a new episode. Unless I get a chance to record another episode before I leave, I won't have an episode next Friday, 11/10. If that's the case, I will do a replay of something that showed the numbers were skyrocketing because it's something that you're really interested in. So hopefully you can get a chance to listen to it again if you haven't gone out and done so on your own. Once again, thank you so much. I will see you all back here when I'm back from a little week away to spend some time with some loved ones. Do enjoy your week. be good, share, take care of each other, and please make sure that we all are accountable for ourselves and for each other. Thank you so much.